Ladies and gentlemen, the Kids in the Room podcast. Kids in the Room podcast.
That's right. That's right.
Brought to you by Move Faces TV. Let's go.
Woo! All right. Hey guys, welcome to the Kids in the Room podcast. Today we've got Nick Prouten on the show. Nick, what's up?
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. It's good to see you. So, what have you been up to, man?
Yeah, so, for those of you who don't know, which at this point in time would probably be most people, I work as a COO for a little project called Lode. We work in the blockchain and cryptocurrency space, and largely my days are filled with just that. We're going in a boom cycle right now. We're in a bull market, and things are good, man. Like, can't argue with the way things have been going in this industry recently.
I know, man. It's crazy. Every time I'm checking, the internet, I'm seeing an actual tweet. I'm seeing buddies just, sharing different things on social media, talking about how they just, such and such went up by such and such amount of percent and how much money they made. I'm seeing people getting cashed out. What the hell's going on? Tell what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, where do you even start with a statement like that? So, arguably what we're witnessing in cryptocurrency right now and with blockchain is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, wealth generation event of our lifetime, right? And everybody wants in on this bandwagon. Now, why should you care? And what is blockchain and what is Bitcoin? We can dive into all of that. But essentially what has happened is after 2017, the last time Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies were really popular in the news, we went through what was called our little crypto winter, where we kind of took care of the fat. We skimmed the fat off the top, the projects that weren't really real, they were fake. We threw those guys out, and the industry went hard into like turning itself into something that almost everybody could use practically and get excited about and get onboarded into this, including banks and institutions. And so you flash forward 4 or 5 years, and now you got Visa, you got JP Morgan Chase, you got PayPal, you got Tesla, you got Elon Musk. All of the major hedge funds in the world, all of these people are now getting into the market and really, really enthusiastic about what the technology can do for the world. And because of that, because they're throwing, dollars at this, the whole market is exploding, right? And everybody usually comes in through Bitcoin. It usually starts off going in through Bitcoin, right? And that's why Bitcoin is now, I think it just passed in valuation. It's now bigger than the Great British Pound in terms of its market cap. Yeah, dude, it's huge. Everybody starts there, but then they go, okay, now I got my Bitcoin. What else in this space can I do? And that's when people start looking at what we call our altcoins, our Ethereums, our EOSs, and projects like what I produce over at Lode, which is digital gold and digital silver and our own sort of cryptographic assets. So it's a really exciting time. And part of what I do going on shows like this with you is help demystify a lot of the stuff about how this technology works, what does it mean for the world, and hopefully make it really simple and exciting for people to get involved in.
Right. These are a lot of questions I think a lot of people are asking, for those that don't know, and for those who are enthusiasts themselves and some who may have pros, they probably already know a lot of this, but how does this all work? Could you explain to me the difference of the types of coins?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's good to start even a little bit further than back from that, if that's okay. Let's start with like what is a cryptocurrency, or what is a blockchain, right? And essentially, a cryptocurrency is a financial tool or instrument that is using a blockchain. So blockchain technology, the best use case that we know of is cryptocurrency. However, the two are not necessarily synonymous, right? The technology can do other things than create, digital currencies and stocks, bonds, ETFs, and financial tools. What a blockchain does is basically improve a lot of the way that we perform transactions in the world today. So what do I mean by this? When you go to your grocery store and you're like, tap spend, I want my Starbucks now. Right? What is happening there is that's a transfer of value. That's moving money from one bank to another, and both banks play a role. They pay these middlemen, right? And then you have your Visa card technology that sits as sort of the in-between layer from that. And front to back, everybody involved, bank A takes a cut, Visa takes a cut, bank B takes a cut. Blockchain gets rid of all of that, says we don't need middlemen anymore. We don't need to use these financial institutions to be trusted, quote unquote, third parties. And we can just use technology. We can use these algorithms and computers to just verify that this transaction is being sent. And rather than having an institution verify that, this system of computers can do a virtual handshake, reach a consensus, and through that we can just transfer funds directly from point A to point B. So 2017, when this first started really blowing up in the world, it was really intimidating to banks. They were like, oh my God, like this sweet little deal that we've built for ourselves over the past couple hundred years is all of a sudden disrupted. Bitcoin's a scam, don't buy in. And in the same breath, they're like, okay, we got to buy in. We got to get more of this stuff. Right. So it was really duplicitous, but now they figured out how to get into the market and how to apply this blockchain technology to their business. So now they're all getting on the bandwagon.
How are they doing that? In what ways are they doing
sure.
that? How are they leveraging?
Yeah, for sure. So, for example, Visa just recently put out that they are going to be settling, they will be allowing settlement directly to USDC. Right. Versus, so now what that means is that rather than just having your average everyday dollar land in an account, you can have it settle in a digital currency, in a cryptocurrency. Right. PayPal is saying that they'll accept Bitcoin. Hedge fund managers are saying portions of their portfolio will be in Bitcoin. Other companies like ours that produce stable coins are making it so that payment terminals can accept blockchain transactions, right? Or payment terminals can accept blockchain transactions. And this, I got to be honest, I didn't really answer your other question before as well. What are these different kinds of coins? So this is perhaps a good segue to jump into that. Not every cryptocurrency, ironically, is a really good currency to use. For example, Bitcoin is awesome because we love it because it'll go up and everybody's getting rich off of it, Lambos on the moon and all that. However, sending a transaction can take anywhere from 5 minutes to half an hour and beyond. That's terrible if you are trying to go out and run a business or make a purchase or do your groceries, right? It's slow, it's heavy. So it doesn't make sense for day-to-day use. It's a better quote unquote store of value, similar to something like gold, right? Versus other blockchains out there that are designed to be used at the speed of trading commerce, right? And are backed by stabilized assets like ours, which are backed by silver and gold, so that a merchant or a business owner can go and say, this can of pop is worth, $10 or the equivalent of in whatever currency. And when they, go out, run some errands and come back, that can of pop will still be roughly priced out at about $1, versus if you price something in Bitcoin, that $10 can of pop could be easily $20, $30 in terms of that price point, or your margins could totally collapse if Elon Musk farts and pulls out of Bitcoin. So it's just not practical, right?
Is that a cyber fart?
What?
Is that a cyber fart? An Elon Musk fart? A cyber fart. It's got to be a cyber fart.
Yeah, you're right. It's a cyber fart. He's gonna find some way to profit off that venture, right? Yeah, through our minds with the Neuralink that is directly beamed up to the satellites. No, but so there are those kinds of speculative cryptocurrencies that are honestly pretty similar to stock, bonds, ETFs for any investors out there. Pretty similar in terms of how they actually work. If we're cutting the crap, then you have your stable coins, and these are assets that are backed by some kind of commodity or maybe a government-backed currency. So, gold and silver, like what we produce, a US-backed digital currency, that USDC I was talking about, Chinese yuan, diamonds, real estate, et cetera, right? And they are considered quote-unquote stable because there is some kind of inherent value that is behind these assets, right? They're not just pure speculation like Bitcoin is. Then you have blockchains and tokens that are almost like operating systems, right? These are your Ethereums, your EOSs, and Trons of the world, where projects and businesses can actually go and take and put their projects easily onto these blockchains and create their own tokens using these blockchains. And this is why Ethereum has done really well and become one of the biggest blockchains out there, most widely adopted, and most people have what's called an ERC20 token, representing their digital currency on the blockchain, or how they want to represent themselves in this market. So Ethereum is really, really compelling to me. Yeah, it's got some growing pains right now. It's got some scalability issues, but if you think about it practically, as all the world's major institutions start to move over to blockchain, Ethereum is in already. It's set itself up as a go-to. I look at it like Apple before they released the iPhone, right? As soon as, if they can solve those scalability issues, it's going to absolutely explode, and it could be like Bitcoin number 2. Here we go. But to summarize, that those are essentially the core different types of blockchains that we have out at the moment. We have our platform, sort of operating system blockchain cryptocurrency assets. You have your stable currency assets, and then you have your speculative assets, which are your Bitcoins and even your Dogecoins out there in the world for you meme lords out there.
And you mentioned something about stability. What is the issue with stability as far as infrastructure? Like, could you explain that?
Yeah. So stability, what am I talking about, right? So depending on who you are, you may or may not know. If you're an investor, most people do, traditional US dollars, Canadian dollars, whatever dollars that you're using from a government-backed currency are actually terrible at storing value. They lose value year over year. This is why what used to cost you $1 now costs you $2, right? That inflation goes on. As more money goes into circulation, the currency that you hold loses its purchasing power over time. And in fact, the US dollar has lost nearly 90 to 100% of its purchasing power. 100% is a little dramatic. 90% of its purchasing power over the past 100 years. That's crazy, right? But it happens so slowly. It's like a frog boiling in water, right? You know that metaphor, right? The pot constantly heats up. It doesn't notice, so it eventually boils itself. Same logic applies here. This inflation takes place so slowly for us in developed nations that we tend not to really notice. But this is part of the reason why there's so much economic turmoil, is that inflation has continued to devalue our money, and wages are not rising to meet that. So on one part, we should probably have some better systems in place. But one thing that we can do today is fix the money that we're using. We can use better money that has inherent value, that isn't in control of a central organization, and therefore the supply has more controls around it. And this is part of the reason why people love Bitcoin conceptually, is because it's scarce, right? And it's not under the thumb of one central agency. So this is what I'm talking about when I talk about stability. Now, Bitcoin, as we were just talking about before, is it's pure speculation. It's raw technology. There's nothing inherently valuable. It's the same reason why, people, it has value because people continue to put their faith in it, essentially. If market sentiment changes tomorrow, Bitcoin could easily go back to $3,000. Now let's look at what we do at Lode. We create digital gold and digital silver. Why digital gold and why silver? Well, silver has over 10,000 use cases in the world, right? It's one of the biggest commodities out there. Everything that you and I are talking on right now uses silver, right? Solar panels, et cetera, et cetera. Because of that, there is an inherent value, right? There is a floor to this price because we actually use it functionally in our day-to-day lives. And similarly, is gold. Gold is less of a commodity. It's more of a store of value. But nevertheless, both of these metals have been used through most of human history as a form of money. The US dollar up until 1971, backed by gold, moved away because arguably you guys wanted to fund some wars. But we won't talk about politics. And anybody can go yell at me on Twitter after this if they want to disagree with me. But essentially, gold and silver have a huge thousands of years of history as being used as a functional form of money. And what financial experts have seen throughout history is that when in times of crisis, even though we have our US dollars and our Canadian dollars and our dollars, people will migrate to gold and silver because it preserves its purchasing power, because it is very stable. So because of this, this is how a project like Lode comes to inception. We go, okay, well, on one side, people need better money. And we have this great new technology, through Bitcoin, through blockchain, that can help make this happen. And then we have assets that have stood the test of time, but weren't really practical for being used as currency in the modern day economy because of the fact that we're not pirates and we're not going to carry around bags of gold and silver everywhere. Basically, it wasn't practical. There were inefficiencies, but by marrying the two technologies together, we can get the best of both worlds and provide a stable type of money that you can either speculate on if you just want to hold it and protect your wealth. You got, Bitcoin goes to the moon and you want to take your wins, right? You should put that in gold versus putting that in a dollar amount in your bank account, because that gold is going to preserve its wealth. It's going to preserve its purchasing power over a longer period of time. So that's what we're talking about when we say stability versus something like Bitcoin.
Right. So you're basically saying like one that's more stability is not as how do you say it? It's not as tragic, or it's more stable in itself as far as the structure, right? As far as like
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially the stability there is in the sense of security that you're going to get, that this what you can buy with this sum will be the same tomorrow as it was yesterday, if not better than it was yesterday, right? Versus putting your money into a dollar, and then you used to be able to buy a can of pop, and now you can buy a couple sticks of gum, maybe, if you're lucky, right? And that's really at the core of what we're really about. We're not saying don't buy Bitcoin. Absolutely, everybody should hold some Bitcoin. I'm 100% there for that wealth appreciation. Get your crazy wins, but all markets are cyclical. Everything goes in a cycle. Nothing goes up forever. What goes up must come down. The law of gravity applies to finances as well, right? And because of that, you want to know when to take some wins, and you should be putting those wins into a stable asset versus something that's going to lose value.
Right. So the whole stability thing is more like those who, you have your type of customer, or your type of person who wants to, be more, wants to do more like mutual funds or something like that, where it's more safer. It's more safer as far as like your percentages and your structures. And you have those who want to be heavy hitters, who want to take larger risk, and they might put their money into things like Bitcoin and things like that, of that sense. Whereas what you guys are doing is more of a stable when it comes to money,
long-term play. Yeah, exactly, right. And that's the thing as well. Because of that stability, it makes sense for running your business through it, right? Versus something like Bitcoin. Again, how are you supposed to price things in your shop when the price fluctuates so fast, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense. But by having this digital asset and using this stable medium, when you're ready to go buy more Bitcoin, you can do so like that instantaneously, and you don't need to worry that you've lost any sort of purchasing power of your dollar, or of your wealth, because you've had it stored in the gold and silver. And what you brought up was a great point. Lots of investors out there are more risk adverse, or they're still uncertain about Bitcoin or blockchain or cryptocurrencies, and they want to tiptoe their way into the market. This is a great way to make that happen, right? As a rule of thumb, and again, not a financial advisor, please go speak to a financial advisor for any definitive advice. But most experts out there will recommend at least some of your portfolio should be held in gold and silver, right? And the same logic applies digitally, right? And so really, there's so many angles in which we're attacking this from, and we really think that there's a felt need for it right now, right? Everybody's kind of racing to be the number one coin, and to see who's gonna really take over the world of trading commerce and be the number one cryptocurrency. I don't buy into that logic. I think the future of money is really diverse, and people are going to hold multiple assets. But I think that we play a vital role in the future of people's bank accounts because we live in crazy times, man. We just went through a pandemic. We're in year 1.5. We're seeing instability in terms of inflation the world over. Venezuela's dollar or currency is essentially worthless, and we've even seen political turmoil in the United States. So who knows? Like, the past 4 years have been absolutely crazy. So who knows where things are going? And if you don't have a digital strategy yet, it's best to start thinking about it, because It's because you don't know where it's going to go, but I do know that the entire market is migrating over to use of this technology. And again, it's the biggest wealth generation event of our lifetime, and I want as many people on this train as humanly possible. I want no man, no woman, no child left behind.
Awesome. Look at you being so
Yeah.
patriotic and, you know, the next savior. Yeah, I mean, like, I get what you're saying. And I think it all makes sense. By the way, I love the whole pop lingo. You know, I haven't heard that in a while. You only hear that towards the Midwest. Like you get to Iowa,
funny.
Ohio, Idaho, and things like that. I say pop, 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 pop,
Pop, pop,
pop.
Yeah,
Can I get
no,
some pop?
that's,
Soda pop.
maybe it's different up here in Canada, but yeah, no,
I think there's a little
I,
overlap right there towards like when you start going to northern states, northern Midwestern states. It is the pop
Yep.
thing. Can I get some pop?
yeah. Can I get some pop? Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you know what? I was born in the Midwest of Canada, Mideast actually of Canada, so that would make a lot of sense. There's some subconscious roots
Yeah,
there
yeah.
that are coming out right there.
Yeah, I mean, if you definitely come from like the east, like the more like New England area, most people don't say pop. It's just soda, you know. And then the West Coast, you know, I think they just usually would call it by its name, a Coke. You know,
Fair enough, yeah. It's funny though, all the little differences, right? Like we're two very similar nations by and large, and depend just a few kilometers over, a few miles over, you know, we say things entirely differently. It's just crazy, man. But that diversity is fantastic. I love it.
what'd you say?
I said that diversity is fantastic. I love it.
I agree with you too, man. It's, you know, but if you look at it in a grander scheme, it's like when you start looking at United States and Canada. I mean, you've got some like areas or regions that, you know, like Europe in general is almost as big as like United States, you know? So it's like, if you think about things like that, like, of course there might be like these different variances, you know, and we're surprised there's not, you know, multiple languages just within those states.
I mean, arguably, depending on what state you're in, they could be argued that their accent is a different language. You know, so some of the southern drawls are just like, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not entirely sure what you just said. It sounds really cool, but I just don't know.
Yeah, the southern draw is really interesting. I've lived all around the United States, and I can definitely tell you, like when I first moved to like areas towards the southeast, like I didn't understand what people were saying. I literally had to like read their mouths. Like I was like, what the fuck are they saying?
Right? It's a
That that
culture.
that
It's
that
equivalent
that
to a
that
culture
that
shock.
man that. I was like, that's what everything sounds like to me. And I was like, what the fuck are they saying? Now it doesn't sound that way, but at first it was hard. It was really, I had to really be meticulous and pay a lot of attention to detail.
I often wonder too, like, you know, people talk to me and I think I just sound normal. Like, what does my accent really sound like to other people? And then I hear impersonations of Canadians and I'm like, I don't know if I sound like that, or like, I don't know. I live in this weird, like, do I sound normal? How do people interpret me? I just don't know.
That is a funny thing that you actually mentioned, because like due to me moving all around the United States, like I wanted to come up with this like this neutral tone. So I worked on this neutral tone so I wouldn't have an accent no matter where I went. Right. So that's what I kind of always try to focus on, gathering a neutral tone by saying neutral words and neutral pronunciations.
Oh, it's fair. I couldn't peg you for any west or east. Couldn't peg you. So I think it's mission accomplished on that front.
It used to be pretty bad. Where are you from?
Where are you from? That's funny. So let's bring it back. Let's bring it back here to digital currencies for a minute. So lots of people are like, okay, Nick, we're just gonna give up the U.S. dollar and we're all gonna use gold for our business and silver. You know what? There's an case to be made that in developed nations, you probably aren't likely to use this practically. You're probably likely to use gold and silver as a speculative tool. Most people do. Most people's grandparents own a little bit of gold or silver or something like that, where they have it buried in a sock drawer somewhere, where we've literally received gold and silver into our project that has been like dug up from somebody's backyard.
Is this is this some like Pablo Escobar type of family that you get involved with? What's going on here, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll dive into that in just a second here. But yeah, there's some like, you're like, okay, you raised eyebrows there. Where we really see like this kind of currency really starting to take off is in developing nations or places that are at extreme risk for hyperinflation. Like I was talking to a gentleman just the other day who lived through the hyperinflation in Zimbabwe that happened, and it was like, people walking with whole wheelbarrows full of cash and then just having to throw that in a dumpster to light a fire because it's essentially has no value. And those nations that are prone to, like, sudden government changes in government, sudden dictatorships, hyperinflation, all of that, having a stable currency that is universal makes a lot of sense. And gold and silver, again, have been used throughout most of the world and throughout most of history as a vehicle for monetary policy and for trade and commerce. So,
but what does that do
these
with
people, especially?
What does that do? I'm sorry, I want to interject in that. What does that do
No.
to the American dollar, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the world currency, reserve currency, is the United States right now, and I think China over the past few years has definitely been making a play for you guys. But I think it would, to an extent, diminish the role of the U.S. dollar in sort of global commerce, but not ultimately like harm the United States, if that makes sense, right? So you're still going to pay your taxes in a US dollar. The government's still going to, conduct the business it needs to within the country using these government-backed currencies. But having universal currencies for people to use, I think creates there is no less dependence on it. In the past, it was the best means that we had for people in developing nations to use a United States dollar, but the United States dollar is still full of flaws, right? And ultimately, the end goal here is to, at least for me, is to create a world of prosperities for as many people as possible, right? And that means changing the type of money that we use to make that happen. So it might diminish the role of the United States dollar in global geopolitics and in certain things like that, but it doesn't mean that the influence that the United States has ultimately is different. Just because somebody in a developing nation in Southeast Asia is using something backed by gold versus the US dollar doesn't take away the significance of the United States. But going back to your Pablo Escobar comment.
There we go. We got to do it.
Narcos, for one, great series, thoroughly enjoyed it. For two, Lode is a little bit unconventional. Totally regulated, and for anybody interested getting into the cryptocurrency space, it's complex. For an industry that had no regulation 3 or 4 years ago, there certainly is a ton of it now, and we've been working hard hand in hand with people for the past 4 years to bring this to the forefront. So ultimately, there's about 70 people working in the project, and Lode has several different corporate entities depending on what region we're in. But the project at large contracts out to service providers. So rather than having a traditional, top down, this is your CEO and this is your, these are your employee worker bee types. The company is composed of a variety of organizations. So you might have 3 or 4 executives all working on a single task together, and so on and so forth. So we largely refer to everybody in the project as an ambassador to help keep it simple. And this, as well as great, is because ultimately this was a project that was grassroots funded by people like you, people like me, who wanted to do something cool and different and bring an innovative project into the world. And it's almost in step with that idea of decentralization with the technology itself. The project itself is full of remote workers, people all over the world. We're active in over 135 different countries. And so we're trying to stay true as much as possible to that decentralized core in nature within the project. So it's not quite Pablo Escobar's family, but it is perhaps unconventional from your traditional corporate structure.
All right. I mean, I think that sounds cool. So, like, how have regulations played a part in, with Lode's strategy and with the whole, coin in general? Like, how have regulations kind of like, manifested and changed and, mutated? And what do you think the future is going to be for these regulations?
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
Because America's got to be on top. You know that, right?
Yeah.
We got to be on top, or else there's wars. There's going to be problems if we're not on top.
Well, I hate to say it, but you guys are slow, a little bit behind, and you need to play some catch up. It's very wars are coming to Canada now, but it's reality is that the U.S. has some of the strictest rules in the world for the cryptocurrencies, and a lot of it is really ambiguous. And it's tricky because, you know, how do you advertise most projects, right? Most marketers will say, oh, we'll throw up some Facebook advertising. Oh, we'll do some Google advertising. First 3 years of cryptocurrencies, like circa 2016, 2017, they're like, absolutely not. No freaking way. Not a chance in hell. Right. So you have to, as a marketer, think about how are you going to bring this to a global audience when you can't advertise on the biggest platforms in the world that everybody's using, where everybody is. You have to get really unconventional with how you approach people, which is part of the reason why I go on podcasts, hey, you know, with you today, right? So that regulation plays a role in how we can speak about what we do and how we reach out to people about what we do. It also changes the way that the products that we can list, right? And how we have to structure these projects legally in order to be compliant. It's really expensive to go through so many lawyers and so many regulators and so on and so forth. This takes time and it takes money to make it happen. And if there's not clear legislation in place for blockchain, you know, you could do everything right and still have the SEC come after you in 3 or 4 years and be like, nah, we want a piece of your pie now, right? So it stifles the innovation in the space. Because of this regulation, we've essentially lost a huge chunk of go time with the innovation in the market. And there are certainly people who are working adamantly to put this to make changes in this arena, and, you know, people who are even forming lobby groups to advocate for cryptocurrencies. But regulators in the United States still treat them like they're traditional stock, bonds, ETF securities, where they're not. There are significant differences to them. So basically, you know, I think legislators are struggling to define what cryptocurrencies are in the United States. A lot of them will treat it just like it's a traditional stock or a bond or something like that, but there are differences. You know, for example, how easily people can send cryptocurrencies back and forth between each other versus, like, you know, I couldn't send you a stock easily, right? Not directly anyways. You'd have to go through a broker dealer or an exchange. So there are these kinds of things that make them different, and because of that, you know, in a lot of regions, it's a bit of a struggle to get over this hurdle if you're selling something that isn't a stable coin or something that is backed, you know, easy to understand. This is gold represented digitally. This is silver represented digitally. That's a much easier sell than we have a virtual equity asset, and it's not technically a stock, and ergo you should let us trade on Binance USA. Right. So it's an uphill battle. But we do try to work hand in hand with these regulators to an extent. I do think regulation is there to protect people. 2016, 2017 ICO boom, there were a ton of scams, and I'm talking a ton of them. Like, people just got absolutely burned throwing their money into projects that really had nothing behind them. Right. So those regulations there are to an extent to protect people from bad actors. But the trade-off to that is that, you know, fewer projects are going to be able to come to the forefront, and you know, I think there's a balancing act to be played there. I think we're getting close in some ways, not just in North America, but at large in Europe and so on. But you know, I think over the next 5 to 10 years will be really telling. I do think most of payments at large, most of the speculative financial industry will all be conducted on a blockchain in the future. And because of that, I think regulation is kind of going to have to keep in step. Otherwise, the whole system will arguably collapse. So I don't got a crystal ball.
Is that kind of the direction, is to make it collapse? I mean, isn't it beneficial for, you know, governments to make it collapse?
Make it collapse. I mean, I don't know. I think they have a vested interest in maintaining control, right? I think there's definitely a narrative of some people that are enthusiasts about Bitcoin about making the system collapse, but I'm not one of those really dramatic people, I guess. I think, you know, like like investment bankers aren't going anywhere. Like, we're not going to topple Wall Street. Like, we might get a good punch in with a GME stock and, like, get to give them the finger every once in a blue moon, but, like, you know, it's not like these guys are just going nowhere, and it's not even like they're all necessarily evil. Although arguably you'd be surprised how many ETFs actually have like very, very not cool things that they're funding. you know, so while for some it may be about toppling the system, for me it's ultimately about creating a better system and transferring to a better system. But that happens marginally, and that happens over a long period of time. It's not a big, oh my god, all of a sudden, you know, everything falls apart and it just flips the switch overnight. You know, it's a slow process. Change is slow.
And what did you say? What is an ETF? Could you explain what an ETF is?
Yeah, an ETF is essentially a security that is like a basket of shares of all the companies. So let's say I wanted to invest in an Apple or something like that, right? Chances are Apple's really, really expensive, and I could only like maybe buy one or two or so, something like that. Average consumer, retail, individual. And I want to hold a little bit of everything, right? So these ETFs hold fractional shares of all of these like companies within the tech space. So I'll get Google, I'll get Apple, I'll get probably Tesla, you know, PayPal, you know, and these ETFs are put out by these institutions for individuals to buy into, so that they can get a little slice of the pie of the whole market, rather than just having to put, you know, all their money into and buy a stock individually one at a time.
Awesome.
And yeah, so those tools and those financial instruments are, you know, you and me, people like you and me, average individuals can go on and access those today. You can get those on your Robin Hoods and your Wealth Simples, and, you know, your broker dealer of choice, really. And they're great vehicles. You know, I again speak to a financial advisor, but I personally highly recommend everybody should hold some ETFs in their portfolio, because it's a great way to diversify your risk, and at the same time participate in the market. So when the whole market goes up, you're going to be a big winner.
Right. How fast is so? Explain to me, like, all right, you invest in one of these coins, right?
Yeah.
It hits the roof, right? You know,
Yeah.
you gain like 50%, right? Within
Yeah.
whatever amount of time, right? Now you see
10
that
minutes.
value.
Let's go.
You want what's that?
I said within 10 minutes. Let's
There you go. There you go. All right. These are the facts, right? So you do that and it comes out, you know, now you want to take that money out. How fast? Or how, you know, how fast, how long does it take to actually take that, that withdraw that money out of the actual system itself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it largely depends on the service provider you're using, but what will happen is you can probably trade out of it instantaneously. You can probably go to a USDC, so that's backed by a US dollar, or back to US dollars instantaneously. In terms of withdrawing that into your bank account, though, that'll probably take 1 to 3 days.
But you can do it.
So but you can do it. Oh yeah. So if basically what happens is you'll go to an exchange, right? A broker dealer app or platform or cryptocurrency exchange, where you'll buy, right? You'll buy in at a set rate. The price will go up. You'll sell. You'll take your wins, and then that cash just sits in that broker dealer account. So if you actually want to use it and spend that money, you'll have to withdraw it from the broker dealer account and into your bank account for functional use. But so long as you make that switch out at the top, right, when Bitcoin goes to the moon and you sell it, then those wins are actualized, and you've got enough money for your Lambo now.
There you go. You got to have the Lambo, man. That's what we do this shit. We do this shit for the Lambo. It's all about the Lambo.
Yeah, the proverbial metaphorical Lambo, and I think that Lambo is a little different looking for everybody. That might be a house. You know, for some it might be just not struggling to make ends meet, right? That's okay too. Like I was talking to a guy on a Reddit forum today who was like, you know, I live in Brazil where our money and our government is like really rough, and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies have just allowed me to, like, you know, maintain par and keep my life. That's a win. That's a huge win for a lot of people, right? So it's not always about getting super mega rich, but if you do along the way, it's not going to hurt. Nobody's
There you go.
Be upset about that.
So basically what you can do is you can leverage that. You go into a coin, you put your money in there, it spikes up or goes down. Hopefully it goes up. Then it takes about 2 days to actually take that money. Do you have to use another service to transact that money, or how's that work?
No, I mean, it really, like I said, it depends on what the platform's licenses and services that it can provide. Most cryptocurrency exchanges at this point that are regulated and legal do have a cash out function. what's known as an ACH payment, where they'll take the US dollars in your account and they'll deposit them into your bank. And that process usually takes 1 to 3 business days.
And which ones are legal?
It really depends on what country you're in. I mean, the United States, there is, yeah, in America, there are certainly plenty of them. The biggest names come to mind are Coinbase. Coinbase is probably like the big whale, elephant in the room, so to speak. Then there's Binance USA, although Binance USA is considerably smaller than Binance Global. Same with Bittrex. Bittrex has a Bittrex USA, and there's also Bittrex Global as well. And again, these companies have had to separate themselves into 2 separate institutions because of the way the United States has chosen to regulate itself. So those are some of the biggest players out there in the ocean right now. But there are lots of challengers coming into the forefront to give people access to crypto. Wealthsimple is a great example. I love what they do and how they do it. And so it really, I mean, even PayPal is allowing people now to buy Bitcoin through them as well. So it's going to become more and more accessible over time. But those are some top players for people to start looking at if you're curious. And of course, we've got our Lode Pay mobile wallet, which you can find in both your Android and iOS stores. If you want to take a look at some digital gold and silver and start holding some crypto in our wallet, you can find that again at Lode Pay mobile within the app stores as well. And we're a good option for those of you guys who just want to start tiptoeing your way into the market.
Right. And what are some of the most popular trending ones that are, making people rich right about now, besides the more stable versions?
Yeah, again, hashtag not financial advice, but I think everybody should hold some Bitcoin. Everybody should get their hands on Ethereum. There's a little controversy around XRP, but everybody should hold some XRP right now. Solana is a good one to take a look at. The Binance chain is a good one to look at. And these are all projects. Kin is another one out there. These are all projects with really clear use cases and really strong user bases and compelling practical applications beyond just, this is a coin and you can buy it. So those are some of my personal picks, but do your own research. The information is out there. What's great about this stuff is nobody's gatekeeping it, right? You can just do a quick Google search and start learning for yourself about the space and about these projects and pick your favorites, right?
Right. So what have you got your feet wet and made some amazing exits from the coin world?
I'm in it from the long haul. Have I got my Lamborghini? Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Not an actual Lamborghini, no, but I've taken some wins. It was part of how I was able to get my first apartment, right? And get into some actual property. That's a big win for me, right? But I'm in it for the long haul. Most of my portfolio is still hunkering down and I'm not really even touching it. I'm sticking it in some interest accounts where I'm going to earn, more Bitcoin and more Ethereum month over month. And I'm just going to let that sit for the next 5 to 10 years because honestly.
Yeah. So you were basically saying that you want to let it sit for the next 5 to 10 years when we left off?
Yeah. Essentially what I believe is the right thing to do right now is buy and hold. And this is the most proven trading strategy in the world. You don't need to be a Wall Street genius to figure it out. Just buy and sit on it. And the probability is likely in your favor. Again, this is still very speculative market, not financial advice. Go talk to an expert. But if you look at adoption cycles, right? Let's pretend like we're talking about the rise of Facebook. There were, the core people who invented Mark Zuckerberg and company, right? Those are the innovators. Then you had your early adopters, which were all his college buddies, hot or not, right? That's when Facebook was basically just there for that exclusive reason. Then you had your early adopters, where Facebook started evolving into sort of a competitor for MySpace. And then where we're at in the cycle right now is probably the very beginning of the early majority phase. And this is when, kids at your local high school are like, man, this is cool. You should get in on this. But grandma and your weird aunt still doesn't know what Facebook is or how it works or why she should be on it. She's still like, what's this whole social media thing? That's the point where we're basically at now within the adoption cycle. What's going to happen in the next few years or so is we're gonna go all the way to the top, where now we've reached a point of mass adoption, and most people will probably hold a little bit of cryptocurrency or use cryptocurrency in some fashion or another, right? And then who knows, some crazy quantum computing thing could come down 150, 20 years from now, and blockchain could end up as Blu-ray DVDs as we move on to the next thing. But, in terms of the adoption cycle, that's where I'd argue we are. We're at the very beginning of the adoption of the masses, and that's why it's an exciting time to just sit and hold.
Right. So you're kind of giving the analogy of like we're like in the 2009 era of Facebook, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Right, where everybody's kind of, MySpace is kind of being, left to the dust. We're slowly launching off. There's this weird, awkward transition. Are you using Facebook? Are you using MySpace? Oh, what's Facebook? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's where we're at right now, right? So most people have probably heard of Facebook. Maybe not everybody has Facebook yet. They're asking you, "Oh, do you have Facebook?" Well, no, I use Questrade or Fidelity Investments or something like that, right? And then like 5-10 years from now, it's like, yeah, of course I own Bitcoin. Who doesn't own Bitcoin? God, So when you put it in perspective like that, there's still so much room to grow, right? We're talking about 7 billion people on this planet, and just a fraction of them are presently holding it. But the entire industry, I promise you, is moving in that direction.
That's crazy. I wonder what that's going to do to the value of money in general, right?
Yeah, I mean, money is a universal. Money is a concept ultimately, right? So I think money will always be money. We always need a third good to exchange services and things like that, right? Like, because the barter system is highly inefficient, because not everybody has a practical skill. Like, not everybody's a carpenter, and you don't always need carpentry done, right? So of course we need a universal third good for people to use. So there will always be some form of cash, but I think our perception of what cash is will radically change. I think the way that people think about their wealth and manage their wealth is going to really change over a period of time. And I think the people who are probably at the top of the ladder, the hierarchy, the top of the hierarchy in terms of society right now, these people are already functioning that way, right? You won't see them holding most of their net worth. I guarantee you Jeff Bezos does not hold more than 10% of his net worth in cash or in US dollars or anything even close to it. Most of his portfolio, most of his net worth is actually stored in Amazon stock, right? And so in that perspective, and probably a whole host of other things that he's invested in, right? In that perspective, that logic that has historically been kind of reserved for the exceedingly wealthy will become the normal for everybody, which I think is a really cool thing.
Now, what do you mean by that? Like, does that mean like everybody will be wealthy? Like, in what way do you mean that exactly? I want to catch that.
Yeah, for sure. So because of how easy you will be able to swap between a government-backed currency and say something like Bitcoin or gold and silver, or maybe a fractional ownership of real estate or diamonds or any other number of cool projects that you want to invest in, you will have more diversity in how your wealth is held and how you store your wealth, and you will be able to instantly cash out as you need to pay for goods and services. But I doubt that in the future, we're talking like 20-30 years out from now, the average individual is probably going to hold a big balance of Canadian dollars in their bank account. It will probably be spread out across a whole host of assets, and then when they need to make a payment, they'll just 1-2 click their way out of it into USD so they can pay their taxes, or et cetera, et cetera. And that's me spitballing on the future, right? That's where I think the market will ultimately go. And I don't have a crystal ball, but based on what I see in the market right now and the sort of the trends and sort of the exposure and lifting of the veil of sort of these financial solutions that's coming to people, I see more of this becoming the norm.
Right. And for guys like Elon Musk that have, he just recently did what was that big thing that he just did? Could you walk me through that?
Which big thing that he just
did? He just recently invested in some type of coin.
Yeah, he threw a huge investment into Bitcoin. He threw a huge investment into Bitcoin and into Dogecoin as well. which is another cryptocurrency asset that not even arguably literally started out as a meme. It was invented as a joke, as a meme, from the words of the founder himself. Like, he's even issued statements saying, please stop trading this. It was a joke. Like, it's not meant to go to the moon. But Elon just took it by the balls and said, you know what, we're gonna turn this into a real functional currency, and started pumping the hell out of it. And for people riding that train, that's great. Have fun with it. I would caution people though, because you can get burned. The supply is infinite. So let's say you buy because you think Elon Musk is going to do another tweet and it's going to explode again, but then all of a sudden more currency is circulating into the market because that's how the algorithm is built. You could lose a huge chunk there. So I'm not going to tell anyone not to invest in Doge, but I'm going to say it's probably what I would consider an advanced token, something to get into if you know how to trade currencies versus, just trying to get your feet wet for the first time.
Right. Totally.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Totally.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Right, man. It's been an absolute blast talking with you, my friend. I do have to sign off here in the next couple seconds, though. Can I give a shout out as to where people can find me?
Of course you can. This has been a great conversation. I've just been listening. I've been a little bit quiet because I've been listening to what you've actually been saying. So definitely give a shout out. I know our time is close, so definitely give a shout out and let the audience know, what Lode does and whatever you want to do. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So you can, if you're interested in what we're doing and you want to learn more about the assets that we're producing, that digital gold, that digital silver, you can head over to lode.one.com. That's Lode.One. If you want to just download our mobile app and get started and you're like, I'm a hands-on learner, let's go, let's do this, Leroy Jenkins, you can head over to lodepay.com, lodepay.com, and that'll get you instant access to your mobile wallet, to our mobile wallet app. If you want to yell at me on Twitter on my opinions, or just have a friendly conversation, I'm open to those too. You can find me at Nicholas Prouten on Twitter. And the Lode team does a great job of producing its own little newscast on YouTube called Lode Pay Media, where you can find me playing sort of news anchor and talking to industry experts all over the world. So there's a little bit of something for everybody, but by and large, like I said, if you're new to the space and you're curious and you want to know how to get started, come say hi to us. We are literally the nicest people, and we are so pumped about getting people excited and educated in the space. So
awesome.
Come on by.
Awesome. You're not an actually nice guy. You're a really mean guy, right? You're just really mean.
Yeah, I'm really cruel. I'm just real nasty.
Well, that's right, guys.
I'm the worst Canadian ever.
Of course you are. No, you're awesome. Thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate you, educating our audience on what Lode is doing and also different coins. It's been a great conversation. Definitely want to spread the word and, love to have you back on another time. But thank you so much. Hang on for a little bit. I just want to make sure we upload everything. But welcome and thank you again.
Yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure, and always happy to come back whenever, my friend.
Awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Kids in the Room podcast. Kids in the Room podcast.
That's right.
Brought to you by Move Faces TV. Let's go.